Charlemagne, Holy Roman Emperor, from 768 until 814. The majority of Western Europe was ruled by the medieval monarch Charlemagne. The Franks were a Germanic tribe that lived in what are now Belgium, France, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, and Western Germany. Charlemagne was crowned king of the Franks in 771. He used warfare extensively during his reign as a great military strategist to further his objectives. Pope Leo III proclaimed Charlemagne the Holy Roman Emperor in 800. Throughout this capacity, he promoted the Carolingian Renaissance, a renaissance of thought and culture in Europe. The majority of Western Europe was under Charlemagne's rule when he passed away in 814. Some people today refer to Charlemagne as the founder of Europe. Charlemagne's early years. Charles the Great, often known as Charlemagne, was born in 742. Although historians have proposed Liege in modern Belgium and Aachen in modern Germany as potential places, Charlemagne's precise birthplace is unclear. Although the future monarch showed a talent for languages as an adult and could speak Latin and understand Greek among other languages, little is known about his early years and education. The Frankish Empire was divided between Charlemagne and his younger brother Carloman after Pepin's passing in 768. Although there was tension between the brothers, a 24-year-old Charlemagne took over as the sole king of the Franks after Carloman died in 771. Charlemagne expands his Christian empire. As soon as he came to power, Charlemagne set out to establish a Christian state by bringing all the Germanic peoples together. He committed most of his reign to military campaigns in order to complete this task. His early conquests included Bavaria, the Lombards, the Avars, and others. The Saxons were a Germanic tribe of pagan people, and Charlemagne engaged them in a vicious, 3-decade-long series of warfare that earned him a reputation for brutality. At the Verdun massacre in 782, Charlemagne allegedly gave the command to kill 4,500 Saxons. He eventually coerced the Saxons into accepting Christianity and proclaimed that anyone who refused to receive baptism or adhere to other Christian customs would be executed. Charlemagne's family. Charlemagne had up to 18 children, numerous wives, mistresses, and other intimate partners. According to reports, he was a loving father who supported his kids' schooling. According to reports, he loved his daughters so much that he forbade them from getting married while he was still living. After the emperor passed away, Einhard, a Frankish academic and contemporary, penned a biography of him. He portrayed Charlemagne as thick and strong in the form of his body and extremely tall without, however, surpassing a reasonable measure in the work Vita Caroli Magni. He had a huge belly and a fat, too short neck, yet his appearance was remarkable whether he was seated or standing. Holy Roman Emperor. Charlemagne supported the popes and donated money and property to the Christian Church in his capacity as a fervent advocate of Christianity. On December 25, 800, at St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, Pope Leo III crowned Charlemagne Emperor of the Romans and the first emperor of the enormous Holy Roman Empire to recognize Charlemagne's authority and to strengthen his relationship with the Church. Charlemagne established himself as a skilled negotiator and capable administrator of the enormous territory he ruled as the Holy Roman Emperor. He sponsored the Carolingian Renaissance, a time of renewed emphasis on learning and culture, and he supported education. A major force behind the Carolingian minuscule, a standardized form of writing that later served as the foundation for contemporary European printed alphabets, Charlemagne also implemented economic and theological reforms. Carolingian Empire. While Charlemagne ruled the Carolingian Empire from a multitude of towns and palaces, he spent a lot of time there. There was a school in his palace that he staffed with the top instructors in the nation. Charlemagne was interested in sports in addition to learning. He was known to be quite spirited and liked to hunt, ride horses, and swim. He was particularly drawn to Aachen because of its restorative hot springs. Additionally, Einhard notes that Charles was no stranger to tasteful extravagance. On important feast days, Charles made use of embroidered clothing and shoes bedecked with costly stones. He appeared to be wearing a diadem made of gold and jewels, and his cloak was tied with a golden clasp. Charlemagne's death and succession. According to Einhard, until his final 4 years of life, when he frequently experienced fevers and developed a limp, Charlemagne was in good health. But even at this point, the biographer writes, he followed his own counsel rather than the advice of the doctors, whom he very nearly loathed, because they recommended him to give up roasted meat, which he liked, and to restrict himself to boiled meat. King of Aquitaine Louis the Pious was made co-emperor by Charlemagne in 813. When Charlemagne passed away in January 814 at the age of 72, ending his more than 4-decade-long rule, Louis became the single emperor. His empire included a large portion of Western Europe at the time of his death. At the Cathedral of Aachen, Charlemagne was laid to rest. His dominion was divided among his heirs over the coming decades, and by the late 800s, it had completely disintegrated. However, Charlemagne developed a legendary reputation and was blessed with mythological traits. For political reasons, Charlemagne was canonized in 1165 by Emperor Frederick Barbarossa. However, the Catholic Church today does not see him as a saint. Charlemagne's skull. Authorities think that parts of Charlemagne's skull and some of his bones were excavated years after his burial in Aachen and placed in church reliquaries all over Europe. However, the majority of his skeleton is thought to have remained at his cathedral in Aachen. In 2014, it was discovered that the bones found in Aachen, including Charlemagne's skull, belonged to a tall, massive man who died in his 72nd and had bony deposits in his knee and heel bones, lending support to the legend of Charlemagne's limp. In a lavish, safely kept golden bust, the top of the skull is still discernible. Sword of Charlemagne, La Joyeuse, or the Joyous, a medieval sword, is thought by some sources to be the sword Charlemagne carried into combat. It is another relic from Charlemagne's reign that has attained almost mythic importance. Experts in the armory disagree about whether the 38-inch sword, which has a gold hilt, is indeed the sword of Charlemagne, or a later design that was largely used for ceremonial purposes. The sword, which is on display at the Louvre Museum in Paris, has been used during French kings' coronations ever since Philip the Bold was crowned in 1270.